How's it going, you guys? It's Scott with Everyday Home Repairs. Today I want to show you the options you have when you want to grind your concrete floor down, most likely in preparation for an epoxy coating. Now I have the purchase options over here and then the rental options, and we're going to compare and contrast the cost of that and how long would it actually take to grind down that surface. And there's going to be some dramatic differences between the two, but at least it'll give you the information to make the smart decision for your own project, because all of our projects are going to be a little bit different. So let's jump in and we'll start off with the side that would be purchasing your own equipment. Now for the purchase option, I have the two different angle grinders here. Both of these specifically are from Harbor Freight, which is a pretty good value, especially for us DIYers. But I'll also put a link in the description below the video to similar options you can get on Amazon, which are sometimes a little cheaper because you can buy everything in one unit. You get the grinder, you get the diamond cup wheel that's going to grind down the surface, and then you also get the shroud that's going to help you vacuum up the dust as you start to remove that concrete from the surface. This is critical that you have a dust shroud on your grinders to minimize the amount of dust and debris floating around. So this is a 4.5-inch grinder. This is great for tighter spaces. And honestly, even if you rent the large floor grinder, it is nice to have a small grinder like this. You're running about $150 to $200 for a setup like this with the cup wheel, the shroud, and the grinder. Then you step up to the 7-inch grinder. This is more like in the $250 to $300 range for the grinder, 7-inch grinder itself. The diamond cup wheel, this one's brand new, so we'll be putting it to the test today, and a similar dust shroud. It has that front part that does retract back to help you get very close to the walls, and that's how you get a really close grind when you get into tighter areas. Again, critical to have these shrouds on whatever you're using. Now, another critical component obviously is going to be a shop vac that can give you good suction throughout the whole project. And there's a couple things you need to do to make sure that's going to work. Let me show you. So for your shop vac, one, you're going to need a pretty capable shop vac that has a lot of suction, because you do not want to run low on suction or you'll start to get that dust and debris coming out of your shroud. Now with any shop vac, you need to make the right choices so you do not plug up your filter. With a standard filter, drywall dust or concrete dust is going to plug that filter within minutes, and your suction is going to go down right away. So you need a fine particle filter for concrete or drywall dust, or a HEPA filter will also work. And then you also need to make sure you're using a bag. Both of these together are going to help you not plug up that filter and maintain good suction throughout the project. So depending on if you already have a shop vac, to get your two different grinders, the cup wheels, the shrouds, and everything you need, you're looking at about $450, $400 to $450. Again, for your reference, look in the description below the video for examples that might be a little bit cheaper, because everything's going to come in one package. If you need to add on a shop vac to make sure you don't have dust and debris going everywhere, that could probably raise you another $100 to $150. So depending on what you already have, those are the costs you're looking at to purchase what you need to do the floor. But now let's actually grind the floor. And how long does it take? You can see I have some blue tape lines down there, and I also kind of walk through why am I taking off this epoxy floor that looks in pretty good condition. Now this floor was a recent project I did, and it's a Rust-Oleum epoxy shield floor. It's a total DIY kit, and I compared that to their Rock Solid edition, which is kind of their next level epoxy floor. Now both of these have a couple different flaws. The main flaw is the prep process. I think this is the core and why hundreds of viewers reported within 3 years that their floor failed and started to chip and bubble. So it's not really a long-lasting product, but that's because you're degreasing and soaking the floor and also doing an acid etch. Inherently, that's going to put some water on your floor, then you're covering it up with the epoxy, and that water starts to come out and it just causes a lot of issues, or at least it can cause a lot of issues. So when it comes to the professional finish, which I'm going to do on this floor with much better product that I'll show you, but it starts off with a prep that does not include soaking the floor with water. You try to keep it dry, and you do a full grind to get down to fresh concrete. Now, no professional is going to hand grind this down, but as a DIYer, we're always balancing, should I buy the tools? Maybe it takes a little more time, or should I rent a more professional grade and only have that for like one day where I have to get it done, but I can't use that on any future projects. You can see this is taking a bit of time, and that's why it's going to be very interesting to compare time and price to renting professional equipment so you can make that informed decision. Now, this is a gas-powered dual disc grinder that I got from Sunbelt, in addition to their vacuum. Their vacuum is very critical because it's going to have good separation of the particles and not plug up, so you'll get a consistent suction. It's going to be even better than what we showed with the shop vac in the setup we have. Now, it takes a little bit of getting used to. This is an open garage, so I can do the gas one. That's the only one they had in stock, but they also make an electric one, which is really preferred for this. So I just did a little sample, and I wanted to see how much did it actually grind down. You can float the head, so you're supposed to release this and float it so you can try to get it as flat to the surface as possible. Takes a little getting used to, and I was testing going forward and going backwards, but you should continue to have that side-to-side oscillation for the best results. Overall, from doing this on the small 25 square foot section here, which is my test section, I preferred going forward, and then I started to get a little bit better at keeping the head of the dual disc flush to the ground so it's getting a consistent grind. Now, this pulls a lot of the dust and debris from the surface, but it does leave behind a ton, so you do need to vacuum it afterwards to pull that off the surface. This can not only take off epoxy floor like this, but it can also truly grind down your surface if you have any high spots in your floor. So now, after doing both sides, let's compare the results. First, let's look at how the grind actually went. The dividing line is kind of right here in the middle. This was the hand ground with the 7-inch angle grinder, and then this was the walk behind rental. Overall, I got a more consistent product from the hand ground because I was right down there. I was looking at the epoxy, making sure I got it all off, but the scratch on the surface and getting any sort of sealant or coating off the surface, it just didn't grind down as deep as the walk behind. But the walk behind, you can see there is some epoxy left behind. So that is mostly just technique on my part and getting used to how fast to go with the walk behind. So I could adjust that over time, but the scratch in the surface and actually grinding down to fresh concrete is better on this side, given that you're doing the correct speed and spending enough time on it. Now, just 1 minute before we do the comparison of time and cost, I just want to show you the rental. So again, this is gas. You might be doing electric. Make sure you get the saddle weights in the side here. That's going to help you get consistent down pressure on the head, and that makes a big difference when you're actually grinding down. If you don't have these weights, it's a little bit hard to get that down pressure to really get the grind off the surface. So be clear on that. Also, you'll have this release. That release is what's going to allow you to float that head. And then you have a bubble level right off to the side, which you're trying to keep in the middle. So then you know those grinding discs are right on that surface and flush. So pretty much independent if it's gas or electric, you're gonna have this release that you're then gonna tighten down when you need to transport. And this machine is very heavy. You are not gonna be lifting this guy in and out of a pickup truck. Make sure you have your vacuum connected up to get full suction, and most likely you are going to want to rent that vacuum. Each one of the discs is going to have 3 cutting blades on them. Make sure you're getting this with your rental. And you might want to check them every once in a while. You might get some buildup of epoxy, or like I had, tape on the floor. And the way these go, there's a magnet in here, but it's also kind of a friction hold. So you can kind of knock those guys out of place, and then that is how they're going to be removed, and that's how they're going to go into place. You can usually push them by hand, but then you do want to tighten them up right at the end. So prior to leaving the rental store, just be clear if these are coming with your rental. Is it baked into the rental cost, or do you have to buy those separate? Usually with every rental, it will come with these off, and you're going to have to install those yourself. So comparing the two options, let's start with cost. Remember we said that the grinders, the 7-inch and the 4.5-inch would be about $400 to $450. Now, if you added the shop vac because you don't have it, you're talking about $500 to $600 in the equipment that you need. Now, the nice thing is you'd have that for any future projects. That comes in super handy, but it is a significant investment. Now, from this side, it cost me about $400 for the dual grinder, the vacuum, and drop off and pickup. That is a 1-day rental. Now, you might need a little bit more time. Just know, check with the rental store. If they're closed on Sunday or closed on Saturday, Sunday, sometimes you can get it dropped off, let's say Friday in the morning, and it actually is not due till Monday in the morning, and that's a 1-day rental if the rental store is closed on Saturday and Sunday. So sometimes you can really expand the amount of time you have with the rental equipment and only still pay for a 1-day fee. So that's a little tip for you, and that's how I've saved a lot of money in the past. But the catch with this, so it does sound cheaper if you can do it for 1 day, but I would say you need the 4.5-inch grinder with this as well. You're gonna get 90 to 95% of your surface ground down with this. It's gonna save you a ton of time and effort, but you're going to need to get the edges. I have a little step over there. You're gonna have spaces where this is not gonna fit. So you have to have some capability to grind those down as well, so you're ready to go when to put your primer on and your epoxy. Now, from a time perspective, this side, doing it by hand, was 25 square feet, and that took me 30 minutes. So I have about 20 times that. I have 500 square feet that I'd have to do. That means I'd have 10 hours of labor, consistent labor, to grind this floor down by hand with that 7-inch. That's a ton of effort. Your knees, your back, and just overall your body's gonna get truly beat up if you're trying to do that. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible, especially if you stretch it out over multiple days or even a week. But just keep that in mind. You got about 10 hours at the pace I was going to do a 500 square foot area within a garage. Now on this side, that same 25 square feet sample on the same epoxy floor, I try to keep it as consistent as possible, was 7 minutes. So at that time, if I multiplied it out, and this is what I'm gonna use, I'm actually gonna grind the rest of this floor, I'm expecting about 2.5 hours, maybe a little bit more because I'm gonna have to do all those edges and stuff. So let's say about 3 hours. So 3 hours compared to 10 hours. And to be honest, this is much less taxing on your body. So if we take into consideration that you're gonna need one of these for either side, the cost is about a wash, a 1-day rental compared to buying everything you need, but you're gonna save a ton of time and just save on the overall effort to get this floor ground down. So let me know what you guys would pick for your own project. I'm curious to get your feedback down in the comments. Now, this is part of a much larger project where I'm getting professional grade materials, and I'm gonna do a primer, epoxy coating, full flake floor, and clear coat. This thing should last for well over 10 years. You can check out this video right here, and it'll go through the complete start to finish if that's something you're looking to do now or in the future. If you want to see the DIY route, which I do think has some flaws, like soaking the floor with water, degreasing, and acid etching, but it might be the option for you because it's cheaper and takes less time, you can check out this video right here where I compared 2 different Rust-Oleum products. So thanks for joining me on this video, and we'll catch you on that next one. Take care.